Hoyo are working on 5 new gacha games right now. 5. Yeah, you heard that correctly. A modern, open world, urban, Unreal Engine 5 physically based rendering RPG. This is essentially Project Mugen or Neverness to Everness, but with the Hoyo polish. A realistic fantasy action physically based rendering Unreal Engine 5 game that doesn't have any more information than that released at present. An animal anthropomorphic social chibi style life sim user generated content games. This is Asta Weave Heaven, which I'm assuming. This is going to appeal to the Animal Crossing, Harvest Moon, Rune Factory players. A brand new Honkai game. This is potentially going to be the Honkai MMO that they revealed. And finally, a European American cartoon shooter set in the near future that is fantasy themed and a multiplayer game playable online with other people. Yeah, this, if it wasn't already aware, is going to be big. Now, if this is your first time here, consider subscribing to the channel, hitting the little bell notification. That way you remain up to date with every single thing that I post, and I post daily. Do not miss out. HoYo's new recruitment information showcases several new games from the company. An image was supplied that has a lot of information, interestingly enough, with imagery. It is all in Chinese. However, it was translated into English. This depicts several different games, 5 in total, I think. Scrolling down, reading through this, it really doesn't make a whole lot of sense. We can see that this game is going to be a modern, urban, open world, stylized, rendering multi-story, Unreal Engine powered RPG. So a modern, urban, open world RPG. This is like Zenless Zone Zero, but in a world like Genshin Impact. Down here we see an Unreal Engine 5 powered realistic action fantasy game. This doesn't say that it's open world. However, realistic fantasy action, this might ultimately end up being something more like Zenless, but with a fantasy setting rather than an urban setting. Here we have animal anthropomorphism, which is creatures, kind of, I guess if you're, I don't, can Zenless be considered a game that uses anthropomorphic creatures? Because they're like humanoid animal people, or maybe something more like Neko girls and Neko guys would be. Interestingly enough, this game does say it is a life simulation socializing gacha, which is, I guess, might be something to do with the Asta Weave Heaven game that they're making. Here we have a modern town, the sense of life accompanied by elves, fun, fantasy, stylized rendering. So here we have a European and American cartoon-inspired shooting game that is set in a futuristic fantasy setting that looks as though it's also going to be online. Okay, this I think might be their first like fully online game. Not a game that requires online connectivity to play like Genshin or Zenless or Honkai Star Rail, but rather an actual online game where people can either play together or are forced to play together, whether it's PvE or PvP oriented. This is interesting. This is actually kind of fascinating. Navigating back to Reddit, it does seem as though they translated it, I guess, in a little bit more detail, a little bit more accurately. Character concept art, a modern city, an open world, stylized rendering, multiple different storylines, physically based rendering, Unreal Engine 5 role-playing game. This, I think, is going to be the big one. Open world, modern, physically based rendering Unreal Engine 5 RPG. Game number 2, a realistic fantasy action physically based rendering Unreal Engine 5 game. Game number 3 is going to be about animals, anthropomorphism, social interaction. It's going to be a chibi style, a life sim with user generated content. So this is definitely the Asta Weave Heaven game. Number 4 is a Honkai intellectual property game, a modern town, sense of life, spirit companion, fun fantasy stylized rendering. What this is probably, or maybe the Honkai MMO that they announced. Before we go any further, let me take a moment here to thank my incredible patrons over on Patreon and my YouTube channel members who allow for me to continue to do dedicated videos like this every single day. You guys are phenomenal, and I can't thank you all enough for the support. Now let's keep talking. Game number 5, European and American cartoon shooting set in the near future, a fantasy game that is also multiplayer. Evidently, they are tackling quite the diverse selection of genres, subgenres in gaming. If there's one thing Hoyo has made very apparent, it is that they want to take over the gaming space. They want to dominate every single market they can. Genshin Impact is what kickstarted everything. An open world action anime RPG. Honkai Star. Okay, well, I mean, we can go back, I guess, to Honkai Impact, which was an instance level based anime action RPG, or even further back with Tears of Themis. Or I think were they the ones that made Gun Girl Z? They're the ones that made Gun Girl Z, right? So I guess we can't go all the way back, but Genshin really kickstarted their, you know, their universe. Then we had Honkai Star Rail, which was a segregated world, not instance, not open world, but segregated world, turn-based anime RPG, which did incredibly well. Then we had Zenless Zone Zero, which is an instance, not entirely segregated world, but not entirely instance world either. Action RPG where you deploy characters on mission, so it's closer to Honkai or Honkai Impact than it is to Honkai Star Rail or Genshin. And then we have all of these. We have other open world games coming that are action based. We have games being built on Unreal Engine 5. We have fantasy games, realistic games, anthropomorphic games, social games, chibi games, life sim games, and, you know, whatever this ultimately ends up being. A European American cartoon shooting game. I don't know about that one. I will give Hoyo credit here. They have not missed the mark yet. Genshin and Honkai Star Rail are gargantuan successes. Zenless Zone Zero is also a very, very successful game. Not as successful as the two aforementioned, but, you know, it is still quite successful, quite popular. This one right here, I don't know. The reason people love all of Hoyo's games are because the stories are good, the voice acting is good, the gameplay is good, the content in the games is good, but more than everything else, the graphics are good. Now, yeah, Wuwa might have better like character models and terrain than Genshin now, but that's because, you know, this is a modern game rather than Genshin, which is like 4 or 5 years old now. But then Honkai Star Rail looks a lot better than Genshin. Zenless looks even better than Star Rail, which looks better than Genshin as well. As we have seen, every Hoyo game gets progressively better looking, but they all maintain the beautiful, crisp, very fluid, very polished anime aesthetic. And I don't know if you can necessarily do that with a cartoon game, like one that is focused on American and European characters and aesthetics. Anime is incredibly successful. Cartoons, on the other hand, not so much, outside of children anyway. I think there is a lot of potential for several of these games. The Yasuo Heaven game, 100%. That's going to appeal to Animal Crossing, to Harvest Moon, to Rune Factory, to Stardew Valley players, and probably open up the entire like player base for all Hoyo games to something they never had access to before. Because if you think about it, Zenless and Honkai and Genshin, they all kind of tap into the same player base. Maybe each game opens their total player pool up by maybe 10, maybe 20%. But this right here, this is millions of people that don't play their games that might in the future. And even if they don't, the people that spend on this game are not going to be the people that are spending on all their other games, which means a total gross revenue increase of something they probably never expected. I think this new open world game, the fact that it is going to be a modern open world, it said urban, right? Urban open world stylized RPG. This could be essentially the Project Mugen before Project Mugen releases. I can't believe, like, when Mugen announced, people lost their minds. Neverness to Everness was announced. People were like, oh, this could be the Project Mugen that Project Mugen never was. But no, when this game comes out, people are even gonna be like, Neverness to Ever what? Oh, goddamn. But this is very cool. I like that Hoyo are working on 5 new games. 5. The Nikkei devs are working on 1. The Blue Archive devs are working on 1. Kudo with Project Nami are working on 1. All these other big gacha studios are working on like 1 game, maybe 2. Here's Hoyo like, we're just working on 5. 5 entire upcoming gacha games. 5. God Damn, dude, this is, oh my god, this is interesting. This is gonna be big. They are going to dominate the gacha market more than ever before. And honestly, I can't wait to cover it all. Hey you, where do you think you're going? Don't you close out of this tab. I didn't give you permission to do that. Sit your ass back down. Click one of the 2 videos that are gonna be on screen in just a moment and keep watching my content. Keep enjoying my content.